My name is Eleanor Whitcomb, and at 68, I thought I had lived long enough to understand every flavor of disappointment a mother could taste. I was wrong. The worst humiliation of my life arrived on Christmas Eve, wrapped not in bitterness, but in the calm, practiced voice of my own son. Boston was quiet that evening. Snow fell in slow, deliberate sheets, the kind that soften the sound of the world until even your thoughts feel muted. I parked 3 houses away from Bradley's home, not because I had to, but because I wanted a moment before stepping inside, a moment to breathe, a moment to touch the one thing that still connected me to the life I once had. Inside, everything smelled of rosemary and roasted lamb. The dining table was set for 10 each plate, rimmed with gold napkins folded into crisp triangles. My daughter-in-law, Marissa, floated from counter to table with her signature polished smile, the smile she used at charity galas and investor luncheons. She glanced at me, then at the bottle of $400 wine I brought. "Oh, Eleanor." "You're here early," she said. I wasn't early, I was right on time. But I simply smiled, placed the gifts for Liam and Chloe under the tree, and shrugged off my coat. Then I saw it. The head seat. The place I had sat every Christmas for 20 years. The place my husband once called the captain's chair. It was already occupied. A large, imposing man sat there, swirling brandy in a crystal glass. Richard Hale, my daughter-in-law's father. A man I had known professionally for decades, a man who believed empathy was a weakness and humility was a flaw. He lifted his glass at me. "Eleanor, long time." His voice hit me like cold metal, sharp, unexpected, unwelcome. But again I smiled. Richard. My son Bradley hurried over. "Mom, let me take your coat." His tone was clipped, rushed, rehearsed. I nodded and waited for him to guide me to my seat. Except he didn't. Instead, he stepped in front of me and said, "So, about the seating." He cleared his throat. I felt a cold, quiet current move through my chest. "That seat," he pointed to the head of the table, "is for Mr. Hale tonight." I thought he was joking. A bad joke, but still. I placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Bradley, it's fine. I can sit at the side." But he stiffened. "No, no, Mom. You don't understand. You need to get up. That seat belongs to him." He spoke louder. Too loud. Enough that forks paused mid-air and Marissa froze with her hand on the lamb tray. The whole room tilted. "I am standing," I said softly. He shook his head. "You're still in the way. Mom, please, just move." The word please held no respect, no warmth, only urgency, only embarrassment. Richard leaned back, amused. Marissa folded her arms, watching. I should have stepped aside. I should have walked to another chair. I should have let it go. But after 68 winters, I had earned the right to stand where I stood. "I'll sit down when everyone else does," I said. And that was it. Something in Bradley snapped. He placed both hands on my shoulders, not gently, not the touch of a son guiding an aging parent. His fingers tightened. Desperation, shame, anger, I still do not know. In the next breath, he shoved me aside. My feet slipped on the polished hardwood, and the world dropped out from under me. I hit the floor. The cold shot up my spine like a blade. For a moment, I could not breathe. Liam gasped. Chloe covered her mouth. Marissa stared. Richard swirled his brandy. My son did not reach for me. He stood above me, jaw-clenched eyes darting nervously to the guests. "Mom," he whispered sharply, "don't make this a scene. Please get up." I pushed my palms against the floor, feeling the tremor in my arms as I rose. I was not ashamed of falling. Bradley stared past me, eyes fixed on anything but the woman he pushed, not once as I steadied myself. When I finally stood upright, I felt something shift inside me. Not something breaking, something returning. A quiet strength I had set aside for too many years. My voice, when it came, was calm. "Of course," I said. "Let's not make a scene." I moved to a side chair, the one no one had touched, the one without a napkin, the one clearly meant to be mine. Conversation stumbled back to life, awkward and forced. Knives scratched porcelain. Laughter resumed. Someone complimented the lamb. Through it all, my son did not look my way, but Richard did. He raised his glass again, eyes gleaming. Good to see the proper order of things, he murmured into his drink. I heard every word. I did not react. I did not blink. I simply reached for the watch on my wrist. The metal was warm, steady, familiar. My anchor, my reminder. I had built a company from nothing. I had led teams of hundreds. I had survived widowhood loss and the isolation of leadership, and yet the deepest cut had come from the hands of my own son. At the table, Bradley lifted his fork. At the same moment, I lifted my chin. One simple movement, two different directions. He thought the night was about a chair. He thought power was inherited. He thought humiliation was quiet. He had no idea what quiet truly meant, because that night, while snow collected on the window panes and the lamb was carved without me, I made a decision. Not in anger, not in revenge, in clarity. A mother's love is unconditional. Her boundaries are not. As dessert was served, I excused myself to the bathroom. I closed the door, locked it, and stared at my reflection under the soft white light. The woman looking back at me was calm, not broken, awake. And in that tiny bathroom with the faint sound of laughter leaking through the door, I whispered to my own reflection, enough. I reached for my phone. Tonight would be the beginning of a different kind of Christmas, a quiet one, a decisive one, a life-altering one. For him, not for me. Because my son had pushed me away from a chair. And he thought he moved a chair. He never noticed I was already pulling the floorboards. I closed the bathroom door behind me and turned the lock. The noise of dinner blurred into a soft hum. It felt distant, like a world I no longer belonged to. The white light above the mirror flickered once before settling into a steady glow. I lifted my eyes. Two versions of me stood there. The first was a mother. Her shoulders sagged. Her breath trembled. Her eyes carried 68 years of giving, bending, forgiving, and hoping. She still wanted to believe her son was good. She still wanted to believe tonight was a mistake. But beside her was someone else, someone who had been quiet for too long, the CEO. Her posture was straight. Her gaze was sharp. Her voice in my head was steady and controlled. She had once managed 2,000 employees and steered a company through bankruptcies, mergers, and market collapses. She knew how to rebuild from ashes. She knew how to turn loss into strategy. I placed both palms on the sink. My reflection steadied. My voice, when it came, was low and certain. Get up. It was not a plea. It was a command. The mother faded. The CEO returned. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. My thumb hovered for only a second. I knew exactly what I needed to do, because humiliation was one thing. Public disrespect from my own son was another. But the final offense had been clear. Bradley did not believe I still had power. Power does not vanish. It waits. I opened my secure folder. Every document I ever cared about lived there. Michael had once worried that I kept too much on my phone. But these files had saved the company 3 times. They would save me tonight. First tab, power of attorney. I had assigned Bradley limited authority over my medical decisions 5 years ago after my first minor surgery. It was symbolic then. It was leverage now. I tapped the screen. Revoke. A confirmation pinged back from my attorney's automated system. Second tab. Executive Authority Clause for Whitcomb Engineering Group. Bradley believed he still held informal influence because he used to sit in meetings with me. He did not know that after Michael died, I restructured everything. Section 4 gave me full control over corporate shares, voting rights, and emergency leadership transitions. I reread the clause. My pulse steadied. Everything remained intact. Third tab, guarantee liability contracts. Years ago, Bradley had asked me to co-sign the mortgage for his first home, a modern loft in Cambridge, elegant, expensive. I agreed because I still believed his future needed room to grow, but I also protected myself. I added a clause he never noticed. The guarantee could be revoked unilaterally at any time. Tonight, that clause was no longer theoretical. I let out a slow breath. The mirror showed the change. My shoulders were no longer trembling. My eyes were no longer wet. 3 documents, 3 doors that could close, 3 consequences. I opened my contacts. 3 names waited there. 3 people who had protected me long before Bradley stopped trying. Call 1, Nora Bennett, my attorney for 24 years. The phone rang once. Nora speaking. Nora, it is Eleanor. Her tone sharpened at once. Are you safe? Yes. I need 3 revocations filed tonight. Medical power, financial guarantee, corporate authority update. Do you want these locked with no reinstatement option? Yes. I spoke without hesitation. Effective at midnight. Understood. I will confirm within the hour. I ended the call. The mirror woman stood taller. Call 2. Nathan Clark, my CFO, loyal, brilliant, quiet, one of the few people who understood the architecture of my legacy. He answered on speaker. Ma'am, Nathan. Initiate a freeze on any account where Bradley appears as beneficiary or authorized signer. His breath clicked softly. All personal or combined. All. I will execute within 30 minutes. Shall I prepare a statement for the board? Yes. State that all decisions align with corporate protection protocol. Understood. I hung up. The bathroom felt warmer. No. I felt stronger. Call 3. Samuel Reyes, my late husband's closest friend, and the man who had promised Michael he would watch over me after he passed. He picked up with concern. Eleanor. What happened? I closed my eyes, letting the memory of the fall steady itself inside me. Bradley pushed me tonight, in front of his children, to seat Richard Hale above me. Silence filled the line. Then Samuel spoke with a tone I had not heard in years. I will handle Richard. You handle Bradley. No, I said. I do not need protection. I need clarity. And what is your plan? A reset. A full reset. Quiet. Legal. Precise. That sounds like you. The words warmed something deep within me. Yes. It is time I remember who I am. I ended the last call. The bathroom was still silent, but inside me something had begun to move, something steady, something sharp, something unshakable. A mother can be wounded, a CEO can be rebuilt. I straightened the collar of my dress. The mirror revealed only one version of me now, the one who had survived 28 years of building a company from a rented basement office, the one who had stayed afloat after losing her husband, the one who understood that dignity once taken must be reclaimed, not requested. I unlocked the door. The noise of the dining room returned in a wave. Laughter, glasses clinking, a new round of wine. None of them noticed I had been gone. But when I stepped back into the room, something shifted. Marissa glanced at me first. Her smile faltered. She did not know why. Richard looked away from his glass for half a second. He sensed something. A temperature drop, a current changing. And Bradley, my son. He opened his mouth to speak, but he stopped, because I smiled. A soft, gentle smile, a polite smile, a smile that meant you have no idea what is coming. I picked up my napkin, folded it once, placed it on my lap, and said in the calmest voice of my life, "Shall we continue?" The table resumed, but the room had changed, not in volume, not in lighting, but in power. They did not know that 3 signatures were already moving through secure servers. They did not know that midnight would redraw every line they thought was permanent. They did not know that humiliation can bloom into strategy when handled by the right hands, my hands. And as I lifted my glass, I knew the truth with absolute certainty. This Christmas would be remembered, not for the fall, but for the rise. And the rise had already begun. I returned to the table and placed the napkin across my lap. No one noticed the quiet shift inside me. The room looked the same. The lights were warm. The cutlery gleamed. The scent of roasted lamb still lingered. Yet something invisible had changed. The balance had tilted. They could not feel it, but I could. Richard lifted his glass. His eyes landed on me with a slow, measuring sweep. It was the look of a man convinced he had witnessed victory. His smile was small and smug. It was the kind of smile men use when they believe a woman has been put in her place. I met his gaze without blinking. He looked away first. Marissa forced a bright expression as she refilled Richard's wine. Her hand shook once before she steadied it. A tight corner of her mouth betrayed a hint of guilt. She had not expected me to recover so quickly. She had not expected me to return with a calm she could not decode. I watched her glance toward Bradley. Her eyes asked a silent question. Was it over? Was I defeated? Her husband answered by ignoring both of us. Bradley cleared his throat with unnecessary volume. He leaned back in his chair. His shoulders relaxed with the self-satisfaction of a man convinced he had restored the hierarchy of the evening. So he said, adjusting his cufflinks, I was telling Dad about the company's future before the seating issue happened. The seating issue. That was how he framed the moment he shoved me. I folded my hands and listened. My heartbeat stayed steady. Our expansion phase will begin next quarter, he said with confidence. We have new investors lined up. Plus, I secured early approval for the Hale Partnership Initiative. Richard nodded with a proud smirk. A strong move, Bradley. Strategic and modern. He said modern as if everything I had built was old. He said strategic as if Bradley had invented ambition. Bradley continued. Once the paperwork goes through, our company will gain an entirely new level of influence. It is time for fresh leadership. Fresh leadership. He meant himself. He believed every word. He had no idea that his authority had already died 2 signatures ago. Marissa placed a hand on his arm. You deserve this, Brad. You worked hard for it. Worked hard. He had walked into a legacy, not built one. I kept my posture still. I kept my expression soft. The CEO inside me listened with cold clarity. The mother inside me listened with silent pain. Richard leaned toward me. Eleanor, you must be proud. Bradley is finally stepping into his role as a real leader. There it was, a microaggression wrapped in a compliment, a jab disguised as acknowledgement. I answered lightly. Leadership shows itself in time. Richard raised a brow. He sensed something, but not enough to understand. Bradley pressed on, unaware that every sentence he spoke was dissolving under legal revocations already moving through systems. I plan to restructure the board, he said. I want younger voices, people who are ready for change. He meant removing my allies. He meant replacing the foundation Michael and I built. Hearing his certainty hit something deep in me. It awakened a memory. My husband Michael standing beside the riverside pier on a windy autumn morning, his hand warm around mine, his voice steady as he said, if anything ever threatens the company, protect it. It is part of our family. It carries everything we built. I remembered the day he passed. I stood in his study and whispered a promise. Nothing will take this from us. Tonight that promise returned with full force. Bradley raised his glass. To the future of Whitcomb Engineering and the Hale Partnership. Richard lifted his as well. To the future. Marissa followed them. To new beginnings. I lifted mine last. My voice was quiet. To clarity. Only I understood the meaning. Only I felt the weight of the coming shift. The meal dragged on with small cuts disguised as conversation. Richard made jokes about old-fashioned management. Marissa offered patronizing smiles each time I spoke. Bradley explained corporate decisions he no longer had the authority to make. He bragged about investments. He bragged about influence. He bragged about visions that would crumble within 12 hours. I simply let them talk. The quiet war had begun. A war fought not with raised voices, but with signed clauses and revoked powers. A war where the loudest victory would arrive in silence. Near the end of the meal, Liam and Chloe came back downstairs. Their eyes flicked toward me with worry. They felt the tension no adult tried to hide. Grandma Chloe whispered, "Are you okay?" I touched her cheek. "I am, sweetheart." Bradley glanced over with mild annoyance. Kids let the adults finish. It was not anger that moved through me. It was something sharper, something forged by decades of sacrifice. The CEO in me whispered. He uses power without understanding consequence. He acts without respect. He believes his position protects him. The mother in me whispered something simpler. He needs to learn. When dessert ended, I pushed my chair back slowly. Every movement was deliberate. Every breath was controlled. "Thank you for dinner," I said. Marissa looked relieved. Richard looked satisfied. Bradley barely looked at all. I put on my coat. The children hugged me tightly. I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "Be kind, always." I stepped outside. Snow drifted through the cold air like falling feathers. The night was still. The street lamps glowed with a soft haze. My car sat under a thin layer of white, but I did not enter it yet. I stood on the walkway, letting the cold brush my cheeks, letting the sharp air clear the last trace of hurt. My breath formed a silver cloud before fading into the dark. I looked back at the warm lights of the house, the home where my son believed he had claimed victory, the home where he believed he had taken my place. He did not understand that humiliation is a catalyst. He did not understand that silence does not equal surrender. He did not understand that consequences walk quietly until they stand at the door. I touched my husband's watch on my wrist. Then I whispered to the snow-filled night, "Let the paperwork speak." And I walked toward the car with steady steps. The quiet war had begun. Snow covered my windshield as I drove home. The wipers brushed it aside in slow, steady arcs. Each sweep felt like a reminder. Something old was being cleared. Something new was coming into view. When I reached my driveway, the house lights glowed faintly through the falling snow. I stepped inside and removed my coat. The silence of the foyer wrapped around me like a familiar coat. I touched Michael's gold watch on my wrist. Its face read 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes until the first consequence. I stood beside the window and watched the snow fall. At exactly midnight, a soft vibration moved across my phone. Nora's confirmation arrived first. Revocation complete. Medical power rescinded. 2 seconds later, a message from Nathan. All accounts frozen. No withdrawals authorized. Then Samuel. Richard contacted. He knows to stay out. Your move stands. I breathed once. Slow, deep, controlled. The quiet war was no longer quiet. The night passed without sleep. I brewed coffee at 5:40. I showered. I dressed. Then I sat at my desk. My home office overlooked the backyard garden Michael built by hand 22 years earlier. The snow dusted everything with a silent white. At 8:02 a.m., I lifted my pen. The clock's second hand clicked. Motif of time, motif of intention. I signed a set of documents that Nora had delivered electronically. Signature 1, Signature 2, Signature 3, 8:02 a.m. The time engraved itself into the story of this family. And then the phone rings began. At first it was one call, a number from Boston, then another, then another. 6 banks, 6 different branches. Bank of America, Citizens Bank, Santander, Eastern Bank, Chase Boston Private, TD Bank North, all within 30 minutes. Every call carried urgency. Every message used the same restrained tone bankers use when something serious has gone wrong. Mrs. Whitlow, we need to confirm recent account restrictions. Mrs. Whitlow, we have detected a beneficiary revocation. Mrs. Whitlow, there is a guarantee clause removal that requires your approval. I responded with the same sentence each time. All actions were intended. At 8:47 a.m., the first text from Bradley arrived. Call me, now. Then another. Mom, something is wrong with the accounts. Then another. I cannot access the business line. Then another. Why is the mortgage flagged? Then another. Mom, answer me. I placed the phone face down. The calls kept coming. The house remained calm. By 9:12 a.m., he had called 12 times. By 9:48 a.m., 24. By 10:03 a.m., 31. 47 missed calls by 11:26 a.m. I brewed a second cup of coffee. The day outside grew brighter. Sunlight struck the frost on the windows and turned it into glass crystals. I sat at the table where Michael and I once planned the company's future. The memory sharpened and warmed me. He had always said, if someone misuses power, remove the power. Paperwork is stronger than pride. By late morning, that truth had reached Bradley's home. At 11:32 a.m., a knock shook my front door. Not furious, not violent, but trembling. I opened it. Bradley stood in the snow. His face was pale, his hair was uncombed, his tie hung loose. His breath came in fast clouds. He held his phone in his hand like it weighed several pounds. "Mom," he said, voice cracking, "why are all the accounts locked?" I said nothing. He stepped closer. "I tried to make payroll this morning. The system blocked me." Silence. I called Citizens Bank. They said the signature authority was updated. Silence again. He swallowed hard. "The Hale deal is on hold. They said they cannot proceed without corporate confirmation." My expression remained steady. His voice rose. "Mom, I cannot access the mortgage file. They said the guarantor withdrew. What does that even mean?" He shook. The snow fell harder. A gust of cold wind swept across the porch. I held my position. His next words came out broken. "Marissa is furious. The kids are scared. None of this makes sense." He stared into my eyes for a long second. I could see the exact moment he realized something he had never considered. I was not powerless. I had never been powerless. I had simply been patient. He lifted his phone with trembling fingers. 47 calls, he whispered. "I tried, Mom. I tried to reach you. Why did you not answer?" I watched him. Calm. Still. Steady. He stepped closer, voice almost a plea. "Mom, what did you do?" The wind brushed my coat. Snow settled on the porch railing. Michael's watch ticked softly on my wrist. I did not answer. Bradley stood on my porch with his breath shaking in the cold. His eyes searched my face for answers that would not come. I let him stand there. I let the silence settle. I let the truth bloom in its own shape. Then I stepped past him and walked toward my car. He followed. "Mom, we need to talk. I need to fix this, please." I unlocked my door without speaking. He reached for my arm. I moved it away with a measured calm. "Follow me to the office," I said. His relief was instant and desperate. Yes, of course. He did not understand what he was walking into. The drive was quiet. Snow slushed beneath our tires. Boston's skyline rose ahead like a shadow carved from steel. I parked in my designated space. Bradley climbed out of his car and hurried beside me like a man running after his last lifeline. We entered the lobby of Whitlow Engineering. The receptionist froze when she saw Bradley. She looked at me next, her expression shifting to something respectful and alert. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitlow," she said softly. Bradley frowned. "Why did she greet you first?" "I am the acting director." I walked toward the private elevator without answering. He followed closely. When the elevator doors opened to the executive floor, he stepped out first. He expected the familiar sight of his corner office on the right. He did not get it. The hallway was silent. The lights were bright. The energy was different. His office door stood open, completely open. He rushed toward it. Then he stopped. The room was empty. Wires were coiled neatly against the wall, shelves bare, desk cleared, no photos, no documents, no identity. His voice cracked. "Where is everything?" I stepped beside him and pointed to the center of the empty desk. A single sheet of paper lay there, one sentence in clean black ink. "This office is not for you." He read it once, then again. His face lost all color. "Mom," he whispered, "what is this? Who approved this? Who authorized this?" A deep voice answered from behind him. I did. We both turned. Samuel Trent stood at the doorway. His posture was straight, his expression steady. He wore a charcoal suit and the calm authority of a man who understood leadership without needing to perform it. He held a file in one hand and a respectful nod in the other. "Good morning, Eleanor," he said. "Good morning, Samuel." Bradley blinked, confused. "Why are you here? You are not supposed to be on this floor." Samuel stepped into the room. "I was appointed interim CEO this morning." Bradley stumbled back. "Interim what? By who?" Samuel placed the file on the empty desk. "By the board, at your mother's recommendation and with full vote approval." Bradley laughed once. It sounded hollow. "You cannot just remove me." Samuel's tone remained even. "You were never appointed. You held no legal authority. Your actions this quarter were advisory only." Bradley turned to me, disbelief twisting his face. "Mom, tell him this is a mistake. Tell him I deserve this office." I kept my voice steady. "You had access, not ownership." His jaw tightened. "Dad wanted me here." I faced him fully. "Your father wanted integrity here. That is different." The words struck him harder than any legal notice. Samuel continued with professional calm. "Your access badge has been deactivated. Security has a box with your items. You may collect them at the front desk." Bradley shook his head. "This is insane. I need to call Richard. He will straighten this out." He dialed quickly. The call connected. Richard's voice came through, strained, controlled. "Bradley, I cannot be associated with this situation. My board is demanding distance. Do not call this number again regarding business." The line ended. Bradley stared at the phone as if it had betrayed him. Marissa stepped out of the elevator at that moment. Her makeup was flawless, but her posture was tight with tension. She hurried to Bradley. "Brad, we need to talk right now." He held up a trembling hand. "Not now. I have to fix this." Her voice lowered. "No, you need to listen." She leaned closer. Her words came out in a thin, sharp whisper. "Brad, my parents said you embarrassed them." He froze. Her parents, Richard and his wife. The family he had chosen to humiliate me for. The family he had put above his own mother. Now they were abandoning him faster than he abandoned me. His voice cracked. "They said what?" Marissa's eyes filled with cold worry. "They want distance, damage control. They think you have become a liability." Bradley opened his mouth. No words came. He looked at me then. The same mother he pushed at the table. The same woman he believed had no power left. The same parent he expected to save him from consequences. But the power had already shifted. The reversal was complete. The truth had arrived on schedule. I turned toward Samuel. "Walk me to the conference room." He nodded. "Of course." I walked past my son, my footsteps slow and firm. Bradley reached out weakly as I passed. "Mom, please, do something." I did not break stride. He called after me with a trembling voice. "Mom, say something, anything." But I kept walking, because consequences were already speaking for me. Samuel walked me to the conference room with steady steps. Bradley's voice faded behind us. His pleas dissolved into the hallway like steam losing heat. The elevator doors closed, leaving him on the executive floor without authority, direction, or dignity. But the higher a man builds his pride, the louder the crash when it falls. I left the building and stepped into the cold air of downtown Boston. My breath lifted in soft clouds. Snow drifted across the pavement. Cars passed with slow wheels. Everything looked calm, yet I knew an entire chapter of Bradley's life was collapsing behind me. By the time I reached home, my phone already held 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Not mine. It was Marissa. I let the phone rest on the counter. The time on Michael's watch read 2:15 p.m. I brewed tea, sat in my kitchen, and waited. Because the next consequence did not belong to me. It belonged to their marriage. At 2:47 p.m., my door camera motion alert chimed. I opened the app. Marissa stood outside her house with her arms crossed over her winter coat. Liam and Chloe hovered beside her. All three looked shaken in different ways. The children noticed the camera light and leaned closer. Grandma Chloe whispered, "Are you home?" I pressed the speaker button. "I am here, sweetheart." She nodded, relieved. "Can we talk to you later? Mom says we should stay inside for now." Her voice carried more maturity than a child should need. Liam stepped forward. His tone was quiet but direct. "Grandma, we know you did not deserve what Dad did. We saw everything." The honesty in his eyes tightened my chest. He continued, "Dad always says respect is important, but he did not respect you. Not once. We talked about it." Chloe looked up at her brother before speaking. "Dad hurt you, and he hurt us too." They were children, yet their clarity was sharper than any adult's reasoning. Grandma Liam said with steady conviction, "You are the kindest person in the house. We know that." Their words were gentle, but they struck with the weight of truth. Marissa approached the camera next. Her voice shook, not from fear, but from exhaustion. "Eleanor, when things calm down, I need to speak with you privately about the children in the house." Her meaning was clear. The free fall had begun. I ended the connection and set my phone down. I gave them space. I gave myself stillness. Snow drifted against the window in soft diagonal lines. Michael's watch ticked quietly on my wrist. At 4:03 p.m., my phone finally rang with the number I had expected. Bradley. This time I answered. His voice was frantic. "Mom, they changed the locks." I said nothing. "Mom, I cannot go inside. Marissa will not let me in. She said she needs time. She said her parents want distance. What is happening?" I waited. He swallowed hard. "The neighbors are watching. Someone filmed me. Mom, please, I need help." "Where are you now?" I asked. "In the driveway," he said with a shiver in his tone. "It is freezing." "Then leave the driveway." There was silence. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That is not my decision," I said. He exhaled sharply. "Mom, you cannot leave me like this. I lost my job, my office, my accounts, my home. I need somewhere to stay. I cannot help you with this," I said calmly. "You must speak with your wife." He hesitated. "She will not speak to me. That is between the two of you." The wind crackled on the line. His breath grew louder. Desperation changed the shape of his voice. "Mom, please, I need a place to sleep." I let my eyes fall on the fresh snow gathering along the garden stones. Every flake landed in silence. "Goodbye, Bradley." I ended the call. At 6:12 p.m., another doorbell notification chimed. This time, Bradley stood outside his own home holding 2 duffel bags and a cardboard box. The porch light behind him cast his shadow long and thin. Marissa opened the door only halfway. She held a manila envelope in her hand. "Brad, we cannot keep doing this," she said quietly. "My parents called. They said we need separation. Immediate separation." He stared at the envelope. "You already filled it out." "I filled it out last night," she said. "After dinner." He took a step back as if the words pushed him. She placed the envelope on the porch and closed the door. He knocked once, twice. Then he stopped. He picked up the envelope with shaking fingers and walked down the driveway. Liam and Chloe watched through the upstairs window. I saw their silhouettes. They stood close together, shoulders touching. No judgment, just heartbreak. Bradley dragged his bags to the curb. After 20 minutes, he hailed a taxi. The camera caught the moment he entered. A grown man carrying the remains of a life he once thought permanent. The taxi pulled away toward Route 1. Boston's neon signs painted the city in red and blue as dusk settled. The taxi dropped him at a cheap roadside motel, the kind with flickering lights and peeling paint. The letters on the sign buzzed weakly. He entered room 23. The camera feed from the motel hallway showed what awaited him inside. A single bed with sunken springs, 1 nightstand, a cracked mirror, a neon light flickering above the window, a heater that hummed but did not warm much. He placed his bags on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time, he did not cry or call. He simply stared at the wall, because reality will always speak louder than fear. At 9:56 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Nora, prepared for signature no contact instruction, execute when ready. I opened the document. Michael's gold watch read 10:00 p.m. exactly. I lifted my pen. Then I signed. The week after Bradley moved into the motel unfolded with the slow weight of consequence. Snow melted in thin rivers along Boston streets. Wind pushed through narrow alleys. Night arrived early each evening, casting the city in cold blue shadows. I watched from my kitchen window as the days shifted. I drank tea. I read old letters from Michael. I walked the garden path wearing the coat he once loved. The house remained warm. My life remained steady. Yet I knew Bradley's world had entered a different season. Humility has its own weather. It arrives with wind. It arrives with silence. It arrives with work. 3 days after the separation envelope, Bradley found a job, a cleaning job. He told no one. The motel camera caught his early departures before sunrise. His shoulders hunched inside a thin jacket, his hands tucked into worn pockets. The snow fell around him like a soft curtain. I did not intervene. I did not call. I let consequences shape him with their own steady hands. On a Thursday morning, he stepped into the lobby of the Calderon Legal Tower. 6 months earlier, he had walked through those same glass doors wearing designer suits. People had stood when he entered. Partners greeted him by name. Assistants hurried to hold elevators. This time, no one greeted him. This time, he wore a uniform, dark blue fabric, a small badge, a cleaning cart beside him. He pushed the cart forward. The wheels clicked softly against the marble floor. His hand gripped the handle. His steps were slow. He glanced once at the mirrored elevator door. His reflection stared back, unshaven, tired, humbled. Humility begins in the mirror before it reaches the heart. He rode the service elevator to the 23rd floor. The doors opened with a metallic sigh. The hallway lights buzzed faintly. Offices stretched out in quiet rows. The sound of a vacuum echoed through the space. It came from the conference room at the end of the hall. Inside, a man pushed a vacuum back and forth with steady rhythm. He looked older than Bradley. Strong shoulders, deep lines around his mouth, a calm face shaped by long years. He turned off the machine when he saw Bradley. "You are the new guy." Bradley nodded. "Yes." The man extended a hand. "Mateo. I work nights. I clean this floor and the next." Bradley shook it. "Bradley." Mateo smiled. "Good to meet you, Bradley. Grab the mop. The hallway is yours." Bradley reached for the mop. His fingers tightened around the wooden handle. The cloth smelled of detergent and old water. He began to move it across the floor. Back and forth, back and forth. Each stroke erased a small patch of dust. Work has a way of stripping pride. Work has a way of rebuilding character. Work has a way of returning a man to his center. As he mopped, Mateo spoke. "My family is from Ecuador," he said. "I send most of my pay back home. My daughter wants to study medicine. I want to help her." Bradley nodded. "That sounds important." "It is," Mateo said. "We all do what we must. Life does not care about pride. Life cares about effort." Bradley swallowed. His voice lowered. "I used to work in an office upstairs." Mateo looked at him without judgment. "Used to is not today." Bradley nodded again. The mop kept moving. Sweat formed at his temples. The air smelled of cleaning spray and old carpet. The building hummed with late-night electricity. Hours passed. He emptied trash bins. He wiped desks. He cleaned fingerprints from glass doors. Each task chipped away at something that had needed breaking. When he finished his shift, he stepped outside into the cold night. He stood in the plaza below the tower. Boston stretched around him in silver and gold lights. Taxis crawled along Tremont Street. Wind carried the distant sound of a siren. Snowflakes drifted under the glow of the street lamps. Bradley lifted his eyes to the 23rd floor where he used to sit in meetings he believed he deserved. Now he looked at that same window with a different heartbeat. He whispered to the air, "What have I done?" But the night offered no answer. The next week, his supervisor moved him to the 27th floor. The work was harder. The windows were larger. He used a long squeegee pole with a bucket strapped to his belt. The floor held the offices of major law partners and investment firms. He began each shift by dragging his cart through a quiet hallway. The carpet softened every step. His breath fogged the glass as he pressed the mop to the floor. The building felt colder on this level, more distant, more honest. At 10:14 p.m. one evening, Bradley stood in front of a massive window panel overlooking Boston Common. The city lights flickered beneath a thin layer of fog. He dipped the squeegee into the soapy water and lifted it with both hands. His grip was unsteady at first. He pushed the tool up the glass. Water streaked downward. The neon from the street painted red and blue reflections across his arms. He wiped again and again. The glass grew clear. Behind him, the vacuum hummed. Mateo worked on the far side of the hall. Bradley paused and pressed his forehead lightly against the cold window. His breath left a soft white circle on the glass. Far below, cars traced thin lines through the night. Then he lifted his head. Outside Lincoln Park, two figures stood near the entrance gate. The light from the lamppost cast their outlines clearly. A woman, a man, familiar silhouettes. They were speaking. They were laughing gently. They were standing close. Bradley froze. His hands tightened around the squeegee handle. From the 27th floor, he could not hear their voices, but he knew the shape of the woman's coat. He knew the way she tilted her head when she listened. Marissa. And standing beside her was someone who was not him. He stepped back from the glass. His heart hammered. A cold truth settled across his chest like winter snow. The free fall was not over. Not yet. The week after Bradley moved into the motel unfolded with the slow weight of consequence. Snow melted in thin rivers along Boston streets. Wind pushed through narrow alleys. Night arrived early each evening, casting the city in cold blue shadows. I watched from my kitchen window as the days shifted. I drank tea. I read old letters from Michael. I walked the garden path wearing the coat he once loved. The house remained warm. My life remained steady. Yet I knew Bradley's world had entered a different season. Humility has its own weather. It arrives with wind. It arrives with silence. It arrives with work. 3 days after the separation envelope, Bradley found a job, a cleaning job. He told no one. The motel camera caught his early departures before sunrise. His shoulders hunched inside a thin jacket, his hands tucked into worn pockets. The snow fell around him like a soft curtain. I did not intervene. I did not call. I let consequences shape him with their own steady hands. On a Thursday morning, he stepped into the lobby of the Calderon Legal Tower. 6 months earlier, he had walked through those same glass doors wearing designer suits. People had stood when he entered. Partners greeted him by name. Assistants hurried to hold elevators. This time, no one greeted him. This time, he wore a uniform, dark blue fabric, a small badge, a cleaning cart beside him. He pushed the cart forward. The wheels clicked softly against the marble floor. His hand gripped the handle. His steps were slow. He glanced once at the mirrored elevator door. His reflection stared back, unshaven, tired, humbled. Humility begins in the mirror before it reaches the heart. He rode the service elevator to the 23rd floor. The doors opened with a metallic sigh. The hallway lights buzzed faintly. Offices stretched out in quiet rows. The sound of a vacuum echoed through the space. It came from the conference room at the end of the hall. Inside, a man pushed a vacuum back and forth with steady rhythm. He looked older than Bradley. Strong shoulders, deep lines around his mouth, a calm face shaped by long years. He turned off the machine when he saw Bradley. "You are the new guy." Bradley nodded. "Yes." The man extended a hand. "Mateo. I work nights. I clean this floor and the next." Bradley shook it. Bradley. Mateo smiled. "Good to meet you, Bradley. Grab the mop. The hallway is yours." Bradley reached for the mop. His fingers tightened around the wooden handle. The cloth smelled of detergent and old water. He began to move it across the floor, back and forth, back and forth. Each stroke erased a small patch of dust. Work has a way of stripping pride. Work has a way of rebuilding character. Work has a way of returning a man to his center. As he mopped, Mateo spoke. "My family is from Ecuador," he said. "I send most of my pay back home. My daughter wants to study medicine. I want to help her." Bradley nodded. "That sounds important." "It is," Mateo said. "We all do what we must. Life does not care about pride. Life cares about effort." Bradley swallowed. His voice lowered. "I used to work in an office upstairs." Mateo looked at him without judgment. "Used to is not today." Bradley nodded again. The mop kept moving. Sweat formed at his temples. The air smelled of cleaning spray and old carpet. The building hummed with late-night electricity. Hours passed. He emptied trash bins. He wiped desks. He cleaned fingerprints from glass doors. Each task chipped away at something that had needed breaking. When he finished his shift, he stepped outside into the cold night. He stood in the plaza below the tower. Boston stretched around him in silver and gold lights. Taxis crawled along Tremont Street. Wind carried the distant sound of a siren. Snowflakes drifted under the glow of the street lamps. Bradley lifted his eyes to the 23rd floor where he used to sit in meetings he believed he deserved. Now he looked at that same window with a different heartbeat. He whispered to the air, "What have I done?" But the night offered no answer. The next week, his supervisor moved him to the 27th floor. The work was harder. The windows were larger. He used a long squeegee pole with a bucket strapped to his belt. The floor held the offices of major law partners and investment firms. He began each shift by dragging his cart through a quiet hallway. The carpet softened every step. His breath fogged the glass as he pressed the mop to the floor. The building felt colder on this level, more distant, more honest. At 10:14 p.m. one evening, Bradley stood in front of a massive window panel overlooking Boston Common. The city lights flickered beneath a thin layer of fog. He dipped the squeegee into the soapy water and lifted it with both hands. His grip was unsteady at first. He pushed the tool up the glass. Water streaked downward. The neon from the street painted red and blue reflections across his arms. He wiped again and again. The glass grew clear. Behind him, the vacuum hummed. Mateo worked on the far side of the hall. Bradley paused and pressed his forehead lightly against the cold window. His breath left a soft white circle on the glass. Far below, cars traced thin lines through the night. Then he lifted his head. Outside Lincoln Park, two figures stood near the entrance gate. The light from the lamppost cast their outlines clearly. A woman, a man, familiar silhouettes. They were speaking. They were laughing gently. They were standing close. Bradley froze. His hands tightened around the squeegee handle. From the 27th floor, he could not hear their voices, but he knew the shape of the woman's coat. He knew the way she tilted her head when she listened. Marissa. And standing beside her was someone who was not him. He stepped back from the glass. His heart hammered. A cold truth settled across his chest like winter snow. The free fall was not over. Not yet. Nu ban muon toi viet ngai. Chapter 8. The Truth in the Snow, Reveal and Confrontation. Below is Chapter 8, The Partnership, Two Fathers. One vision, 1,000 words. First person, Eleanor's calm, cinematic, quiet strength voice. No ellipses, no sentence over 25 words. TDS friendly. Chapter 8. The Partnership, Two Fathers. One vision. The morning sun rose in a thin silver line over Boston Harbor. I stood at my kitchen window with a cup of warm tea in my hands. The steam lifted gently. The world outside glowed with the soft light of early winter. Michael's gold watch ticked on my wrist. Time did what it always does. It cleared the path forward. I had a meeting today. A meaningful one. A necessary one. By 10:15, I drove through Cambridge and turned into the private lot behind the Hale Research Center. The guard recognized my license plate and opened the gate with a respectful nod. I parked beneath a row of frosted trees, stepped out, and breathed in the cold air. Richard Hale waited at the entrance. The last time I saw him, he was seated at the Christmas table, watching my son push me. That memory held no weight today. His shoulders were relaxed, his posture open, his expression softened by something that looked very close to humility. He approached me first. "Eleanor," he said with a quiet tone, "I am glad you came." "So am I," I replied. We entered the building together. The lobby smelled of cedar and fresh paint. Winter light streamed across polished floors. For the first time, we were not adversaries circling power. We were two old minds who had endured what ambition can destroy. Richard gestured toward the private conference room. I wanted to speak without noise, without family, without pride. "Pride has already taken too much from both of us," I said. He gave a short, thoughtful laugh. "True, and I suspect that is why we are still standing." We sat at the long wooden table. A small tray of tea waited between us. He poured mine first. He was careful and slow with the gesture, as if honoring something larger than politeness. "I owe you clarity," he said. "The partnership proposal I pushed Bradley to pursue was not meant to harm you. I wanted a bridge between two firms that built this city." I know that I answered. Ambition is not the enemy. Misuse of power is. He met my gaze with steady eyes. "Your son crossed many lines. I should not have stood by. I will not repeat that mistake." It was the first time he acknowledged it without excuse, and honesty is a language only grown adults know how to speak well. I folded my hands. "Richard, I am not here to discuss Bradley. I am here to ask one question, and that is," he asked, "what is your vision now that the old arrangement has collapsed?" He leaned back and breathed in. "A partnership, not with Bradley, with you." The words settled like new snow. He continued, voice even. "Two founders, two families, two legacies. No ego, no power games. A project built on experience rather than youth's posturing." My heartbeat remained steady, but something warm spread through my chest. "Michael always respected you," I said. "And I respected him," Richard replied. "We did not agree on everything, but we understood each other's principles. Principles. The currency of true leaders, the thing Bradley had not learned." Richard set his cup down carefully. "Eleanor, this city still needs the minds that built its framework. We may be older, but our clarity is sharper than ever. And our patience thinner," I added. He smiled. "That is what makes us dangerous." Our shared laugh broke a tension that had lived between our families for years. In its place came something simpler: understanding, respect, possibility. We spent an hour outlining a joint initiative that would strengthen both companies without imposing on the other. It was practical, ethical, strong. It was the kind of collaboration Michael would have approved. By noon, we stepped outside into the cold winter light. Snow fell in slow, quiet flakes. I wrapped my scarf around my neck. Richard buttoned his coat. "Eleanor," he said, "I lost faith in many things this season, but not in you." His sincerity surprised me in its gentleness. I appreciate that I said, "And if your son ever needs guidance," he added softly, "he will need humility first." "He is finally learning it," I answered. We parted with a simple nod, not allies by convenience, but by clarity. I drove across the river to Marissa's neighborhood. The kids had asked if they could see me today. Snow crunched beneath my tires as I pulled into the driveway. The front door opened before I even reached the steps. Grandma Chloe shouted. Grandma Liam echoed louder. They ran toward me with arms open. Their boots kicked up small sprays of snow. They collided into my coat with warm laughter. Their small hands gripped tightly around my waist. "You came," Chloe said. "We missed you," Liam added. I kissed their foreheads. "I missed you too." Marissa stood behind them. Her eyes were tired, but her expression held something sincere. Gratitude, respect, a silent apology. "Eleanor," she said, "thank you for coming." "You are their mother," I answered. "I will always come." We spent an hour inside. Hot chocolate, homework, quiet conversation. The house felt lighter without raised voices or rigid expectations. At 2:30, the kids pulled me outside to show me the snow fort they were building. I stood beside them, smiling as they molded cold bricks with their gloves. What I did not see immediately was the figure standing across the street. Bradley. He had come from the bus stop. His cleaning uniform jacket hung loose around his shoulders. Salt stains marked the fabric. He held his work bag against his chest like a shield. He did not walk toward us. He stood still, watching. He looked at Liam helping his sister pack snow. He looked at Marissa standing in the doorway. He looked at me laughing beside the children. But it was not jealousy that crossed his face. It was realization, a painful, heavy realization. And then he noticed the man walking toward me from the sidewalk holding a folder. Richard. They shook hands warmly. They exchanged a soft laugh. They spoke like two elders who shared the same understanding of life. Bradley's eyes widened. The man he pushed his mother aside for, the man he betrayed her dignity for, now stood beside her with genuine respect, a partnership, a bond, a future being built without him. Bradley lowered his head. His breath trembled in the cold. A truth finally reached him with full weight. In the distance, he whispered to himself, "I was never worthy of that seat." And for the first time, he believed it. The night settled over Boston like a heavy blanket. Streetlights hummed. Snow gathered in thin ridges along the sidewalks. The world outside my window looked silent, but I felt a shift moving somewhere far from my home. Somewhere inside a cheap motel on Route 1, my son sat awake. I did not know the details yet, but mothers understand the shape of a moment even before it arrives. There's a quiet pressure that sits behind the heart. It tells you that something is turning, something is breaking open, something is being rebuilt. At 3:02 in the morning, Bradley began to write. The motel room glowed with a single yellow bulb. The walls were thin. The heater buzzed with a tired rattle. The blanket on the bed was rough and smelled of detergent. He pulled the small desk closer to the lamp and sat down. His hands were no longer smooth. They had changed. Calluses lined the palms. The skin near his knuckles had cracked from winter air. His nails held faint traces of cleaning chemicals. He placed a blank sheet of paper in front of him. The pen shook in his fingers. He inhaled. His breath carried the cold of the night and the truth of his choices. Then he began. The letter took shape, slowly. Not an apology, not a plea, a record of awakening. A man writing about the weight of pride. A man describing the cost of ignorance. A man trying finally to understand what it means to be human. He wrote about the night he pushed me. He wrote about the shame that followed him like a silent shadow. He wrote about his cleaning job and the shock of mopping floors where he once bragged. He wrote about Mateo, who sent paychecks to Ecuador, and how that humility showed him what real responsibility looked like. He wrote about the 27th floor and the glass windows that reflected the version of himself he had feared to see. He wrote about seeing Marissa in the park and realizing he had destroyed his own marriage. With arrogance he mistook for confidence. He wrote about Liam and Chloe, and how he hoped he could teach them the truth he had learned too late. And then he wrote the line that mattered most. "I do not ask for forgiveness. I only want you to know I am finally becoming someone I can respect." His handwriting wavered at the end. He folded the letter. He placed it inside a plain envelope. Then he walked it to the motel's front desk and asked the clerk to mail it at sunrise. He returned to his room, sat on the bed, and stared at the wall until dawn. It was the first night he did not cry. The first night he did not beg. The first night he simply accepted. That morning I brewed tea. The steam rose in gentle swirls. Michael's gold watch rested warm against my wrist. A delivery envelope slid through my mail slot shortly after 10. I recognized Bradley's handwriting instantly. My heart did not race. My hands did not tremble. I carried the envelope upstairs to my study. The room held the quiet dignity of old books and soft afternoon light. The desk faced the garden where Michael once planted apple blossoms. I sat down, opened the envelope carefully, and unfolded the letter. Bradley's words filled the page with honest weight. Fault admitted without self-pity. Responsibility accepted without excuse. Growth described without begging for reward. I read every line slowly. Every sentence carried the tone of a man who had finally looked inward. Every paragraph felt like truth, written at a cost. When I finished, I placed the letter on my desk and sat back, letting the quiet wrap around me. Snow drifted outside the window. The room held a stillness I had not felt since Michael passed. On the shelf beside me rested a wooden keepsake box. Michael carved the lid by hand 30 years ago. Inside were letters he wrote during our early years. Notes we shared when the company struggled. Small moments preserved because they mattered. I opened the box gently. The scent of cedar rose into the air. Memories pressed close. I placed Bradley's letter inside between Michael's oldest note and a small bookmark he once gave me. The placement felt right. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, recognition. Growth belongs beside legacy. Transformation belongs beside memory. I did not close the lid. Instead, I left it open. A quiet gesture, a thin crack of hope. The clock on the wall ticked once, then again. The sound lingered in the warm room like a soft pulse. I reached for my desk lamp. The light had glowed all morning. My hand rested on the switch for a moment, then I turned it off. The room dimmed. Shadows softened the edges of the shelves. The garden outside shimmered beneath a thin layer of fresh snow. But the keepsake box remained open, its lid lifted, its space waiting. Not for apology, not for explanations, for possibility, a small possibility, fragile, unspoken, real, and that was enough. The morning after I read Bradley's letter, the house felt unusually still. Snow pressed against the windows in soft curves. Light entered my study with a muted glow, as if the world understood that something delicate had shifted during the night. The keepsake box sat open on my desk. Bradley's letter rested between Michael's oldest notes, exactly where it belonged. I stood beside the desk for a long time. My fingers traced the edge of the wooden lid. A quiet certainty rose in me. I had to answer him, not to reopen a door that needed to remain closed, but to honor the honesty he had chosen. I sat down with a blank sheet of paper. The pen felt balanced in my hand. My breath steadied. The room held its silence. I wrote my response in 2 simple paragraphs. First paragraph, acknowledgement. I thanked him for the truth he shared. I told him I recognized the work he had done on himself. I told him I saw the man he was becoming and that the honesty in his words carried more weight than any apology ever could. I told him his growth had value and that he had chosen a path worthy of respect. Second paragraph, boundaries and encouragement. I told him that although I honored his transformation, I was not ready to rebuild our relationship. My boundaries remained in place because healing required distance. I encouraged him to continue living with dignity, humility, and self-respect. I told him I believed he could become a man his children would admire. I wished him peace and purpose. I signed only my name, not Mom, not Mother, just Eleanor, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. I placed the letter in an envelope, sealed it carefully, and walked it to the mailbox outside my gate. My boots crunched on the snow. The winter air tasted sharp but clean. I slid the envelope through the metal slot and let the cold swallow the moment. A chapter closed, not with anger, not with reconciliation, with truth. Days passed, then weeks. Life rebalanced itself in quiet ways. I focused on the company with steady hands. Richard and I built a partnership founded on mutual respect. Our decisions were efficient. Our communication was sharp. Our collaboration flowed easily like two people who finally discovered they had been rowing the same direction all along. The house became warmer as Liam and Chloe visited often. They filled the rooms with laughter school stories and the small moments that make an ordinary day feel whole again. Marissa kept a respectful distance, but she never interfered with the children's time with me. She understood boundaries, too. Life had taught all of us lessons in different ways. And then, 1 year passed. Christmas arrived again. The scent of nutmeg drifted through the kitchen. Gentle music played in the background. Liam and Chloe helped me set the table for dinner. Their hands moved with excitement, arranging plates, straightening candles, and debating which napkins looked more festive. The house glowed with golden light. I placed my mother's porcelain at each setting. I added 2 extra chairs for the children's guests. I folded the linen squares with care, and then I walked to the head of the table, the seat where the entire story began, the seat Bradley pushed me from, the seat he gave to another man as if I held no place there. I pulled the chair back slightly. I aligned it with the center of the table, and I left it empty. A message without a single word spoken. Respect must be earned. I felt no bitterness, only calm, only truth. Liam looked at the empty chair, his brow lifted slightly. He understood the symbolism without needing an explanation. "Grandma," he asked gently, "are you sure you want the seat empty?" "Yes," I said. "Some spaces must stay open until they are deserved." He nodded and continued placing silverware. Chloe hummed to herself as she arranged the gingerbread cookies. The snow outside continued falling in soft, slow spirals. The doorbell rang. Richard stepped inside, brushing snow from his coat. He carried 2 wrapped gifts and a bottle of burgundy wine. "Merry Christmas, Eleanor," he said kindly. "Merry Christmas, Richard. Come in." We spoke easily as the children brought dishes to the table. Everything felt grounded and warm. No tension, no shadows, no ghosts waiting at the door. Dinner unfolded with laughter and gentle storytelling. Liam recited a poem he wrote in English class. Chloe spilled cider on her sleeve and laughed at herself. Richard complimented the cranberry sauce twice because he knew I used Michael's old recipe. There was joy in the night. Simple, honest, unforced. As we ate, the empty chair remained at the head of the table, not as a wound but as a boundary, a quiet reminder that dignity cannot be taken away. It can only be surrendered or defended. When dessert came, Chloe lit a small candle beside the empty seat. For Grandpa's memory, she whispered. My heart warmed. "Thank you, sweetheart." We finished dinner with stories and soft music. When the night ended, Richard helped me wash the dishes. The children dried them with oversized towels. Snow continued falling outside my window, peaceful and steady. After everyone left, I stood alone in the dining room. The candle flickered beside the empty seat. Its flame swayed like a tiny heartbeat. I watched it for several long breaths. My journey had started with humiliation. It ended with clarity. I stepped closer to the head of the table and placed my hand on the wooden back of the chair. The surface was warm from the candle's glow. A simple truth rose inside me. My son pushed me away to give another man my seat. That night, I did not push back. I simply removed the entire table. And in losing everything, he finally found himself. Fade out. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If this journey touched something in you, give the video a like. It helps more people find stories about strength, boundaries, and quiet justice. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. Check the pinned comment below. I left a question for you. I want to hear your thoughts and your city. If you enjoy faceless storytelling about family dignity and second chances, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We post new stories every week. Until the next chapter, take care of your heart and protect your worth. Thank you for watching.